Aye.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City of Parker special meeting on the 7th of March, 24. If you would, please, Pastor Davis, would you deliver the invocation for us?
Let's stand and bow our heads, please. Father, we say thank you that we still live in a country and in a state, in a city when we are allowed to call on you to help us. Help us in times, God, when we need your help, God, in deliberation and knowing what to do. God, tonight we call upon you for wisdom, guidance, understanding, God, as we deliberate. God, and let the decisions be made tonight, God, be in the will of you. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Chapel.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Miss Barrett.
Yes.
Miss Barrow.
Here.
Mr. Chappell.
Here.
Mr. Haney. Mayor Kelly.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Before we get started with our agenda tonight, we have anybody that has an item from the audience, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record and state your question. You have 3 minutes to enter your question, your conversation. Nobody? All right, thank you. First item is going to be the only item really on the agenda tonight is the regular agenda item for a public hearing for the, what's it called?
Coastal acquisitions.
The coastal acquisitions. Mr. Sloan, did you have anything you wanted to start with?
Yes, sir. As the council, for their information, this item is a two-part discussion. The first part of the discussion will be about variances and whether the council is inclined, based upon clear and convincing evidence, to grant one or all three variances, and then if the council does grant the variances, whether or not to grant a development permit to the applicant, Coastal Acquisitions. This particular application was filed several months ago. It went back and forth with the city's engineer. The city's engineer came forward ultimately with a recommendation to approve. That went to the Planning Commission, and in the interim period of time between the time that the engineer reviewed the permit application and the time it came to the Planning Commission, the City Council had enacted a change to the land development regulations which necessitated three variances for this applicant. The variances being: one, access off of a state or federal highway; two, two, the number of parking spaces; and three, being the issue for the size of the building that is being proposed. So I'll work in reverse order. The size of the building currently in the land development regulations, and you all had a discussion about this, is 22,500 square feet. The applicant is seeking a permit for 28,000 square feet. That's the first issue. The second issue is the number of parking spaces. The applicant's indicated that he is going to provide limited retail for customers, and based upon the January amendment to the land development regulations, that would require 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. And the last is in this sub area. The amendment that was done in January requires delivery access, for lack of a better word, off of a state or federal highway without the use of a city street. The applicant does have 3 parcels lined up, one of which does abut Highway 98, and so the applicant could have access off of Highway 98 if he so chose to do that. So those are the three areas in which the council needs to consider and determine by clear and convincing evidence, if you hear it or you don't hear it, whether or not the variances should be granted. As the council will recall, there are 7 tests in the variance test, and I'll go through those one time, which would apply to all 3 variances. 1, there is a specific hardship affecting the development of the property resulting from the strict application of the provisions of these regulations. 2, the hardship is not a result of actions of the owner and is not based solely on a desire to reduce development cost. 3, the proposed variance is necessary to preserve a substantial property right where such property right is generally available to other property owners of adjacent or nearby properties or other properties in the land use category. 4, the proposed variance will not materially increase congestion on surrounding streets, increase the danger of fire or other hazard, or otherwise be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. Number 5, the proposed variance will be compatible with adjacent and nearby development and will not alter the essential character of the land use district. Number 6, the effect of the proposed variance is consistent with the purposes of the regulations. And number 7, the effect of the proposed variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The applicant has submitted his variance request in writing and provided you what he believes is justification for granting variances on each of those 3 items. I would recommend that you allow the applicant to come to the podium and give a brief presentation, and then any interested parties, and particularly any party that might claim standing, could come up and basically cross-examine him and or put on their own evidence.
Mr. Santoro, if you would.
Good afternoon. Philip Santoro, North Star Engineering, also the owner of Coastal Acquisitions. Hereby request that our variances be approved as we have submitted to you, and trying to meet all of the rules and regulations that you have and the tests that you have. The purpose for the location of the building is so that we can save the front for the future development of more retail commercial up front for beautification of the city. If we put the building up front on Highway 98, then we won't be able to do that in the future. So that our purpose is to be able to have that up front, back one, so the up front can be saved and used for future development. Our development will be not as many cars coming as there was previously. All the loading and unloading that will be done inside the building. So the safety for traveler, that will be less impacted than it was in the previous development that was on site. Fire safety, those issues, is strictly has metal. There's nothing going to be associated with anything that will be of a fire hazard. The 28,000 square feet to the 22,500 square feet. Because we want to make sure that everything is inside the building, that we can load, unload inside the building, that we can store everything inside the building, so that nothing is outside the building, is the reason that we need the additional square footage. I could play the devil's advocate and say, nothing in your rules doesn't say that I can't build a 20,000 square foot building and right beside it build an 8,000 square foot building. We're asking to be put together. There's nothing there that doesn't allow me to do that. I have the land that's required for that. But that's just not good common sense. The number of parking spaces that we're asking for. I own facility in Dothan that this is going to replicate, okay? We know how many parking spaces we need. We've done this previously. There's no reason in the environment that we live today that we build a sea of asphalt. It would take 1 acre solid of asphalt to put the parking spaces that's required. That just doesn't make sense. And so for the purpose it's intended, there's no reason for it. We understand also that moving forward, we can't say the future. For some reason, if it didn't work and we had to, and we was going to sell, then we would understand that we'd have to put in the parking spaces for whatever else went there. We understand that that's part of the reason for parking spaces for a building of this size. But for our use, there's no need for it. We don't need it. Because we only have 2,000 something square feet that's even used for offices. The rest of it is for storing material and for loading and unloading. Road accessibility, we understand that the reason that you would rather us come off of the state road is for purpose of not having hindrance or anything to tear up the city roads. I believe that our development is going to bring in so much more than any negative that we're going to have to tear up the roads for the number of trucks that we get. It is a minimum amount for what we get for big trucks that come in. So I'll be glad to answer anything that you need me to. I've tried to do everything I could do be as straight up honest and go through this process to the best of my ability.
Okay.
I just asked it would be approved.
Thank you, sir. If you don't mind, just step to one side, and we may have to answer some questions. Don't leave.
And just for the record, Mayor, I want Mr. Santoro was sworn before, so is all that testimony you just gave true and correct to the best of your ability?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. I caution you at this time, you will be under oath. So be clear in your mind when the words you use are accurate. Does anybody like to come to the podium at this time and pose a question to Mr. Santoro, or to anybody for that matter? If you do, I need your name, address, and then we'll swear you in.
Just a procedural question.
Are you opening the
Paul
public
Palmer.
hearing?
It's open soon. It was already open when he said, so go ahead.
So-
Mr. Palmer, just 1 minute, we need to swear him in.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct? Do you swear and affirm that
I-
the statements you are about to make are true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
So it's just, so as Dr. Sloan, as I call him, mentioned earlier on, there's really two parts to this meeting. There's a part discussing the other parts of the DO, and there's parts discussing the variance. Is that correct? So do we so if we have comments on both of those, do we put them all together at one time, or do we, when we're talking about the variance, which is the issue at hand right now, is that when we present our variance issues? And when we're talking about the rest of the DO, do we present our concerns at that time? I'm just asking for guidance. Any guidance?
Well, Mayor, I would suggest that both
At the same
issues
time.
are on the
Right.
are on the table now.
Yeah. So you're gonna both at the same time.
Okay.
So go ahead. You're on the floor.
Okay, well,
And-
then
and-
I don't really have any questions for him. I just was gonna read my proposal there. I just wanted to know.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present our concerns. Today's hearing is to address petition for variance application filed 2/28/2024 by Mr. Santora, and to address other issues in his application for conditional development order permit. A concerned group of Parker citizens will each present a different aspect of our concerns of allowable land use rules that are being ignored and procedures not being followed. Respectfully, we request that the following accommodations. Our presenters are here to inform the City Council, not to debate. I ask that they please not be interrupted while they have the floor. And I ask that timing not start until they have stated their name and address. And if interrupted, I ask the timing to be stopped until they have regained the floor.
Absolutely.
First, relevant background information why a variance is even required. The facility proposed by Coastal is defined as manufacturing both by Florida statutes and Parker LDR, which both adopt by reference the North American Industry Classification System, NAICS. Specifically, it is NAICS Code 332311 for prefabricated metal buildings manufacturing. Manufacturing is not now, nor has it ever been an allowed use in general commercial or any other land use district. The same ordinance which created light manufacturing also made non-light manufacturing a prohibited use in general commercial land use districts. Ordinance 2023-419, page 29. The proposed facility fails to qualify as light manufacturing because of the arguments that we're here to discuss today, the planned building area, the ingress-egress issues, and the parking spaces. Our attorney, Mr. David Therick, was not able to attend tonight, so I am not going to, can't pose any questions to Mr. Santora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Palmer, can you identify for the council your perceived standing to object to this application, well, the variance and the application?
Yes, my standing comes from the fact that I have had water issues from that property and how that property is built up and how those water issues are mitigated dramatically affect my property. I bought the house in '84. It's the only house I've ever bought. And when the Parker Church was there, almost 90% of the property was covered by hard surfaces. And so there wasn't what we call a groundwater transverse migration issue, simply because all of the water ran off and down the street. And the city, based on a request by me, put up a curb on my driveway to keep the stormwater runoff from running down my road, into my property. So I didn't have a problem with stormwater runoff. Now, when we had...
Mr. Palmer, I'm not asking about the whole project.
But I
just
have to
wanted
explain this
standing.
because I have to, this is a really fine detail that affects why I have standing. There's two reasons.
Okay.
So when the Parker Church was being taken apart, they did it in piecemeal, they couldn't just take all at one time. So there were areas that were now exposed to rainwater, collection basins, if you will, and we had a fairly significant rain event. The project was delayed for quite a while it was partially torn down. And about a week and a half after the event, which is about the rate that plume could come down, it started bubbling up in my driveway, bubbling up in my carport. I even asked the mayor to come look at it because we were dealing with other people in Parker that were having problems with groundwater intrusion. Okay, we added to the LDR specifically a clause in there which dealt with water infiltration. And I might note that neither the city council, the city's engineers, nor Santora did make any discussion of that, which is okay. It's a difficult topic. So that's my primary issue. The secondary issue is, I believe it affects the property, my property value. I bought that place. It was a church. It's the only house I've ever owned. And now we're turning it into a manufacturing facility. And it's not just my concern about the building that you're doing there, but now we have that whole other section just south of 2nd Street. What's that going to be? So yes, I have standing, and David Therick has certainly confirmed that I have standing. He wouldn't have taken me as a client. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Refresh my memory, Mr. Santor. There was a machine on your property that pumped vapor into the earth, correct? Or on that corner piece there, which basically made that piece of property have no value, right? What were they pumping out there?
they're pumping the water out of the ground.
Yeah.
Cleaning the water.
Putting it back in there.
into the ground.
Right.
Because there is
A
plume,
contaminant down there.
contamination plume.
Right. Did you know what the contaminant was?
Sir,
Did they ever tell you what the contaminant was?
I have it, but I don't recall what it was.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Joe, can you tell us what the contaminant is there?
Yes, I can. You want to swear me in first?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
swear him in.
Okay.
Do you swear?
Joe,
and aff-
okay. Joe Huffbauer, 5033 Sharon Drive.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to make is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the plume you're talking about is benzene plume, which is a carcinogen. And that's, if you want my standing, I'll tell you now, it's as a taxpayer and a resident of Parker, I don't want to see continued contamination of the groundwater because it's going to cost us.
Absolutely. Can you tell me where that contamination came from?
Yes, from the maintenance department here at the Parker.
That's unusual because the people that put that equipment in there told me that contamination was from a gas station from 1954.
It is.
It's either one or the other.
No, the contamination. Can I please have my 3 minutes back?
You can have 25 if you need them.
Okay, sure. If
Do
you
you
like-
remember when we first
Okay.
started, we said we would, but I'm
Okay.
curious to know.
Sure. Well, here's the plumes. So you want to see them?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. Those plumes show that there's distinct levels of contaminants at various locations in Parker. And most of those contaminants came, as the title of the investigation is, from the maintenance department. ACOM has been working since 1995 to clean up the groundwater. The City of Parker Maintenance Yard is the off-site plume. The City of Parker Maintenance Yard Bible Believer site. There's 3 sites. Both of them have contaminants, including benzene, naphthalines, all the way to depths about 120 feet below surface. Okay? They've got various plumes out there, and they've got various groundwater conditions.
Yep.
And that's the purpose of my concerns here, is have we decided that putting 4 borings in the ground to 15 feet and not encountering groundwater
Sir, look at the council when you're
Sure.
speaking.
is sufficient to defining the impact of the stormwater ponds on that plume and on that remediation. They are air sparging. What that means is they're taking air and they're pumping it into the groundwater. And as you can see from most of the monitoring results, they've got them under pressure, so the wells are bubbling. Some are overflowing. If you've got water going up, how is your stormwater ponds going to go down? And where those ponds are getting located is right adjacent to where they're remediating. We have had problems with streets already for a pond over by the school. It damaged our streets. We had to pay to replace all that asphalt. And that was from the school pond. And they weren't pumping groundwater up at that point. Are we to accept this evaluation without further consideration?
What did ACOM say when you got these printouts from them?
I didn't get them from ACON. I got them on file. These are available to anybody if you'd like to see them. It's in FDEP's Oculus site.
Yeah.
And you can get them, just make a request, or you can go on Map Direct,
Okay.
which allows you to have them.
So
So
who-
if I can continue my points, and then I'll answer your questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Like I said, we've got Coastal Acquisitions, which is a fabricated metals company. EPA has already defined those companies as requiring a section or multi-sector stormwater permit. And they only require those of major industries. Industries such as hazardous waste sites, allied chemicals, places like that. So there is a concern that there's some issues about stormwater. I'm very happy that they're putting everything inside. However, can we be sure that nothing will make it into those ponds, which are already already adjacent to a contaminated zone? Secondly, the sparging going on, it has had an impact on their 3-hour event. They indicate in their drawdown that it will be about 3 hours that pond will empty. And that I don't see how that's possible, given that their sparging is showing that it's bubbling up from the ground below surface.
Next, I looked at the data from the ACON annual operation maintenance report, and I have all that data here, and I'll give it to you when I'm done. But there's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wells that show water levels between the period of 2017 and 2022, where it's only 4 to 6 feet below grade, and sometimes even less than that. And how are we going to put a 6-foot deep pond in a situation where that's the case? All I'm asking, and that's what I'm here, is that we take the time, because we deserve it as Parker residents, that they do a thorough evaluation. The data's there. Here's some information I'm willing to give to the applicant, which shows the pressures that they're pumping into each well out there. So you know what the hydrostatic heads are, and you can put it into your model and get a real evaluation of what those ponds will do. And that's all I'm asking, and that's what I want you all to consider before we go in and just say, okay, let's go ahead and have these ponds installed. Because I work for the city of Panama City, and part of my duties are going and dealing with stormwater ponds. And a lot of them are leaking, and a lot of them are flooding. And right now I got an issue down on 14th Street I'll be dealing with tomorrow, which deals with flooding. And that's another pond that doesn't work the way it was intended to. So can we just do it the right way the first time? And that's what I'm asking this commission to do. Send it back and have them just run their numbers. He is an engineer. I'm sure he's a very good engineer. Let's just take the time and do it right, because we deserve it as a community. I like to think that we look at our citizens and their concerns and take them for serious, that they are. Thank you for your time. I'm willing to drop off all this information with you. You can supply it to the applicant. I really don't have a comment for him, but if he needs to call me, y'all have my number. I'll be willing to talk with him.
Thank you, Ms. Halper. Appreciate you, man. Whatever you got.
Does he have any questions for the applicant, or does the
That was,
applicant have any
was it a
questions for
statement?
him?
Do you have any, do you have anything?
No, that's enough. And,
Mr.
oh, I did miss one thing. There is a document here that deals with the diagnostic of in situ air sparging performance, and it was done by the Air Force Research Lab right here at Tyndall. So they have already evaluated air
Okay.
sparging.
Anything?
Might be something to consider.
Anything, Mr. Santoro? Okay, all right, thank you.
Very much.
Okay, you have the floor, ma'am.
Do you swear, are
She
you
needs
ready?
to give her
Okay.
name first.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Jeanette Howard, 1123 East Park Street. These are my comments from the 27 February Planning Committee meeting, which I still find to be relevant. I live a half a mile away and walk by the proposed development site almost every day. Last Friday, 23rd February, I noticed a city variance sign at the property. I looked on the city website, however, there wasn't a variance application from the landowner. I then reviewed the Florida law regarding variances and understand that a variance is permission for a landowner to go outside the limits of the code and build something which would be illegal under the LDR. My interpretation, landowner wants to build something illegal under the LDR. The reason for the law allowing variances is that in some situations, application of the LDR would create a hardship that it would not allow any use of certain properties. My interpretation, landowner believes the LDR creates a hardship preventing any use of the property, which I believe to be false. A variance is prohibited, but it will be allowed if necessary to prevent the potential for no authorized use of the property. My interpretation, compliance with the LDR will not create the potential for no authorized use of the property. The criteria for obtaining variances are strict, and the grounds for overturning illegal variances relatively easy to prove if sufficient facts of legal hardship is not placed in the record. My interpretation, sufficient facts of a legal hardship has not been placed in the record available to the public. Generally, a variance is authorized if, due to circumstances unique to the applicant's property itself, and not shared by other property in the area, there exists an undue and unnecessary hardship created by the LDR. My interpretation, there are no circumstances unique to the landowner's property, and the LDR does not create an undue and unnecessary hardship only to the landowner. The hardship criteria has been interpreted to mean three things. The hardship cannot have been self-created. My interpretation, landowner has created the hardship. Consistency with neighborhood and scheme of regulations. My interpretation, other landowners have not been granted variances similar to this, indicating a lack of consistency. Number three, no reasonable legal use can be made of the property without the variance. My interpretation, property can easily be legally used without the variance. Unfortunately, the city has failed to provide documentation of the landowner's variance application for the public to review. The public is entitled to thorough and accurate information prior to a public hearing such as this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions?
Do you? Does anybody have any questions?
No, does
Does
she have
she
any questions
have any
of
questions?
Mr.
Of Mr. Santoro?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Santoro, do you have any of her?
How are you, ma'am?
Pretty good.
Good. Need your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Cynthia Rosso, 1440 Dover Road.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to make is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you know a quasi-judicial decision like today's consideration of Coastal Acquisitions Development Order can be overturned if the City of Parker does not follow fair procedures? Procedural due process is a legal doctrine in the United States that requires government officials to follow fair procedures. Procedural due process requires, at least for the government, to afford the person notice, an opportunity to be heard, and a decision made by a neutral decision maker. I would like to put forth reasons that I believe the City of Parker has not and is not following procedures for governments to follow, like the city's own ordinances, Florida state laws, and the United States Constitution. Reason number one, as stated in Parker's land development regulations, any person desiring to undertake a development activity not in conformance with these land development regulations may apply to the city for variance, either in conjunction with the application for a development permit or for an existing development. Last week, I did see that Coastal Acquisitions did submit a variance application, and it was uploaded to the website. However, according to the city's own land development regulations 6-3.3, any application for a variance shall be considered by the Planning Commission and the City Council. The variance application being considered tonight was not reviewed by the Planning Commission. Reason number two, Parker's Municipal Code Section 15-2 requires a certificate of traffic concurrency. As of today, I have not seen this document. Does the city have this document? Reason number three, Florida courts have ruled that comments and opinions of professional staff, as well as expert testimony, may indeed constitute competent substantial evidence upon which a local government board may base its decision. However, I have found many misstatements and falsehoods in the planning comments review document that, as they say, would not hold up in court. Even after the Planning Commission chair said that there was some incorrect information on that document, it still has not been corrected. There are also other drawings and site plans referred to in the planning comments document that have not been made available to the public. This leads me to reason number four, procedural due process requires that a decision is made by a neutral decision maker. In a quasi-judicial hearing, each Planning Commission member has a critical duty to avoid ex parte contacts. If such a conversation has occurred, then that ex parte conversation is supposed to be revealed before the hearing starts. Last week, it was never stated at the Planning Commission hearing if any conversations with Coastal Acquisitions were made between any of those members. Oh, well. Could you give me another
Go ahead.
minute?
No, finish.
Thank you. And yet, it was a planning chair. He had made a comment that he did have pre-hearing conversations with Coastal Acquisitions, and yet he was allowed to adjudicate the hearing held last week. Has the mayor or any city council members had any pre-hearing meetings, communications, or conversations about coastal acquisitions development order? If so, that should have been revealed at the beginning of tonight's hearing. Case law states that if ex parte conversations are not revealed at the beginning of a quasi-judicial hearing, that makes the hearing biased and does not meet the procedural due process requirements. The above-named reasons demonstrate that because the city has not followed its own laws, state laws, and the United States Constitution, it has failed to provide the public all of the documents that are part of this development order and failed to provide a fair hearing for both sides of this land use issue. This hearing should be appealed. Thank you for giving me extra time.
Thank you, ma'am. You're welcome.
And Stan,
Any questions,
can
Mr.
you
Santoro?
identify what standing you have, ma'am?
The standing?
I'm a stakeholder and I'm a taxpayer. I own $1.4 million of property here.
How close is your property to the applicant's property?
It's, I don't know, I never measured it, maybe a mile. It's across the bay.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't.
Does the applicant have any questions for her?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Floor is still open. Anybody would like to come to the podium?
Pat Fosick, 1344 Stratford.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I too am going to somewhat summarize what I talked about at the Planning Commission, but I do have one other comment based upon Mr. Sloan's opening this evening. Thank you for that. I think it really set the tone for things. If I recall correctly, I believe Mr. Sloan represented that the development order was submitted sometime a year ago. Obviously, we know that we went through a request for a land use change, which was also granted. And then between the time that the development request was requested and the time that the engineer approved it, that this new ordinance came into play. And that because of this new ordinance, that Mr. Santora, Coastal Acquisitions, now requires a variance analysis.
No, ma'am. I said it occurred after the engineer's review of his permit application, the amendment to the ordinance.
Okay. But do you think it's the ordinance that requires him to now submit a variance request?
At the time the ordinance was amended, the land development regulations were amended, that LDR, as it stood back in August, September, was the basis on which the engineer reviewed his application.
Okay, and that's sort of the same point, if you will, that it was based upon the LDRs and the comp plan that was in existence at that time.
Correct.
Those LDRs and comp plan do not allow manufacturing within the city limits of Parker. Industrial is a category that's set forth by the state of Florida, as well as agriculture. Neither of those two land use designations exist in the city of Parker. Industrial is where manufacturing falls. Even the existing LDR specifically excluded manufacturing from general commercial. In addition, however, is the CRA. We've talked about the fact that this is a CRA area. It's supposed to fight the blight, and I understand that Mr. Santora, with great respect, has talked about putting in a retail strip mall, if you will, 3-4 suites, whatever it is, at the front of the property. Well, that's in the future, and he's told us several times throughout the times that he spoke before both the Planning Commission and the City Council that it's not a guarantee, it's not a promise, he'll do it if things are right. And I trust his word. However, what is his definition of right? This is a CRA. We're supposed to be doing 1-story and 2-story mixed-use commercial. This is a 24-foot tall metal building. And not is it just tall, there was a comparison made before about the church steeple, but what are the dimensions of the building? Mr. Santora, forgive me, I don't recall. Guesstimate is fine.
I'd rather tell you something.
Thank you.
Don't tell you something wrong and then come back on me.
It was 150 by 150, wasn't it?
He'll tell us.
Get beside you here.
Text with-
If you guys could.
I got it right here.
Do you? I've got it labeled out as thing and northern and eastern, not as distances, so, again, I didn't want to tell you wrong.
Thank you.
Tell us, what do you got?
He has
I have it
distances.
as northern and eastern points, not as just.
Do you have 150 by 150?
What is it?
150 by 150?
That's 22.
Yeah.
See, that's 22.5.
That's right, that was the original number, right? And we're going to 28, and that is?
That's the square footage, not the dimensions.
Well, but it's,
That's what you asked us.
yeah, but, okay, so if we take 28,000 square, or if we, I'll continue, because I know we're gonna run out of
But
time.
it-
We're already out of time.
You're out of time, don't worry about it. If you take 28,000 square foot building, you divide it by half, right? And you multiply it by 2, now you know the square footage on the inside of the building.
How long is it? How wide is it? 24 foot tall?
Yeah, the
church-
24 feet is irrelevant, that's the pitch at the top of the
Right.
roof.
But again, there was a comment made that the church was there and the church was taller than 24 feet.
Fire station's
The
taller
church-
than that.
Excuse me, the church was not more than 150 feet wide and 150 feet long.
It certainly was.
Which is the requirements for a 22,000.
Excuse me, the church was over 150 feet long.
Okay, I may be mistaken.
No, I know you're wrong.
Okay, thank you. But it's still larger than is allowed under the ordinance. The ordinance was written, the parameters were set. We talked about, it's supposed to, the CRA is supposed to enhance transportation and pedestrian safety. I don't know that it does that. Having these trucks, whether it's the delivery trucks that are bringing the rolled steel, or whether it's the trucks with a 350 with a 16 or 22 foot trailer that are coming in to pick up metal, they're gonna be going up and down a residential street. The corridor revitalization, the intent of the CRA was traditional commercial. The CRA has been in place for 20 years. We passed that, the city passed that all the way back to Mayor
Hendricks.
Brenda Hendricks, and we're finally at a point where we're gonna be able to receive some income from the ad valorem tax, thanks to Mr. Kelly and the council, that has been assessed, and the increased property value with regard to the whole of Parker after Hurricane Michael. So the money's coming in, but we're not gonna be able to show an enhancement, because we're gonna have a large 24-foot tall metal building that does not meet any of the design requirements of the CRA. And I ask the city council to consider that as they discuss the decision.
Thank you, Ben.
Do-
Any questions, Mr.
Does she have
Santora?
any questions for him?
I have none, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Silver.
I apologize for not having that information. It's a 200 by 150, and then there's
I
a
don't- 2 by
shutout of it, so
150.
I apologize for not having that.
Quite all
at the
right.
time.
I knew it was something by 150. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Diane Coates, 1521 Dover Road. Thanks for letting us talk again tonight.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Thank you.
Okay,
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
yes,
Thank you.
okay.
The microphone closer to her for us.
Is that, I know it's gotten moved, is that a lot better?
I think it sounds.
It's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a statement I had said at the Planning Commission meeting on February 27th, 2024. I may not be as comfortable speaking as some of the other people, but I may not have the skills to do all the research they do. But I do know this. This project seems to have been pushed through since the very beginning. I don't know the property owner, and he may be a very nice man, but that does not mean he does not have to follow the rules. My concerns are based on what was said at the various meetings. At the very first meeting, he said, I was told I'd be able to do what I wanted to do. And I said, who told you that? He also said he knew the entire property was zoned commercial and that he bought it anyway. He also said he was a developer and familiar with the process. So why does he now expect the planning commission to recommend his project to go to the city council with its blessings? During the April 13th meeting, he was told that manufacturing is not allowed in any area within the Parker city limits. Regardless, he asked the planning commission and the city council to approve changing parcels from mixed one-use low-density residential to general commercial. The planning commission voted and told the city council it did not support changing the land use categories. But even though the city council appointed the planning commission members and should rely upon their recommendations, the city council voted 3-2 to approve the land use change. Why? All these other people have clearly researched the law and shared with us all of what they found. If the request for the approval of development order with or without conditions or granting a variance to the property owner does not meet the requirements of the laws of Parker and the state of Florida, why would the planning commission recommend this project to go further? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have any questions
I don't.
for Mr. Santoro? Mr. Santoro, do you have any questions for the lady?
Ms. Coates, what, can you tell us, Ms. Coates, what is your claim to standing in this case?
I just think that that building should not be built.
Okay.
We thought we had a vision of Business 98, and there's still some people that don't go along with that. That's fine. But
I'm just asking what your standing is.
mine is, I want Parker to really look good. I want to live here. My house is here.
Thank you.
Live in Donaldson Point. It's really great. We have good things going on. Let's keep it going.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mark Riga, 1503 Dover Road.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Santora a question?
You can.
Mr. Santora, have you and I ever had an ex parte conversation?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. What I am accused,
May I
please.
make a statement the way you said
Please.
that? There's only one person in this building that I've had an ex parte conversation with, and I pointed that out at the last planning commission meeting. And so, and now he sits on the other side fighting me, although he said, and he called me and apologized to me for his actions, and then said, I support you. And that was Mr. Palmer. And he's the only person that sits on the planning commission or sits on the city council commission that I've ever spoke to outside of standing in front of you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Well, I've got my 3 minutes. So I have been accused on social media of this, and I've remained silent because I would believe that it's our job in planning to research, affirm, and confirm before we make such radical statements. The young lady who was here who accused me of that, obviously she was trying to use that in order to assuage your decision in opposition of this terrific gentleman. I just want you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
All right. I did call Mr. Santora, and the reason I called is all of you who were on the commission at that time, on the city council, I had presented to you a fairly significant set of studies that I had done as to why this wasn't good for the city of Parker. Do you remember those conversations? One of the things that we were dealing with in Parker was, is this a laydown yard? Do you remember how we were talking about that with the Publix property, with the, what was the Parkway Gardens property, and one other place I don't recall. But all of that was, they were all asking for laydown yards. So that was a topic du jour that we were worried about. I was concerned, and a lot of a lot of the presentations that I made to each individual council members, you weren't on the council at that time, was directly related to, I even used a term, is this a lay-down yard in a cocoon? So when I had finished all of my analysis, I realized, oh no, he has customers at Tyndall, and this is what he's going to do. It's not a laydown yard. So I called him to apologize specifically that it was not a laydown yard. And at this time, I apologize that you took offense to my comments in my development of standing, that I listed you as both the owner of North Star, and the owner of Coastal, and the PE thing. That wasn't meant as an insult to you, but it was part of how I was establishing my standing. So you took offense to that, I understand, but I didn't mean it as an offensive thing. So pardon me if me calling was not the right thing to do, but I had misrepresented to all of you who I was selling that why I didn't support this project, because I thought it was something other than he presented. That
Mr.
was
Palmer,
why.
were you a member of the planning council when you called it?
I was.
Okay.
I wanted at the planning commission, because I had heard somebody mention ex parte, I wanted at the planning commission for people to know who I had talked to. I also would like to make the point that if Mr. Palmer is on the planning commission and he's that confused about a laydown yard or a 20-something thousand square foot building, I have a concern.
Point well taken.
Bear with me, I'm moving slowly. I feel like a hobbit, but here I am. You ready?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, no,
I'm still
not
right.
quite.
Okay, you
It's
right, you right, I'll stand here for a minute, it's all
I
right.
just need a couple more words.
Nope, do your thing.
All right.
Beverly Hutto, 1001 West Park Street.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, I am a planning committee member. I don't come in front of you as that. I come in front of you as a citizen in this city. And we are trying to keep this city. And therefore, I am going to address some of the things that have been addressed because you have been waylaid with the same thing we were at the planning committee meeting. As far as the watershed, water overload, things of that nature, if you've seen the pictures for the building that Mr. Santoro plans to build and all of the greenery around it, wouldn't you think, and I'm just going to use some common sense here, kids, wouldn't you think that if we take all that concrete up and we put a building there and everything else is green around it, wouldn't that suck water? I mean, isn't that our thing with the LDR about how much house you can have on a piece of property? Is so that we have things that suck water. I'm good with it. And some plants and some trees, and that makes sense, right? So the properties, if you drive around, a lot of the homes and stuff that are down here along the water that are, I'll say, concerned about their property value and stuff like that, if you drive around our city's a little old city, and we used to allow kind of a lot of crazy things to happen. There are trailers, there are metal buildings, there are old trailers. There's a lot of other things that impact property value. I've asked 4 realtor friends of mine how much they felt this would impact, and they're like, well, honestly, developed property is better than non-developed property just sitting there derelict. That's their answer to me, and I have to trust that they're probably right. So then at the council meeting, I asked this question, and I've not really had too many people come back to me. What would you rather see there? A plant nursery? So let's put a plant nursery there. Not that Mr. Santoro is proposing that, but now what do we have? We have trucks coming 3 or 4 times a week. We have them delivering plants. We have runoff from all the water that goes through the plants, fertilizers, things of that nature. I mean, think ahead these things. A restaurant, how much riffraff would be with that? All of that would still be asphalted, because if you put a restaurant there, you've got to have trucks coming and going. You got to have parking for all the people at the restaurant. I'm sure there'd be some lovely landscaping, but, you know, I've worked in the restaurant business. You know, 10 o'clock at night, all the staff is standing out back smoking or doing whatever next to the dumpsters, you know. Section 8 housing, which is a big thing right now, and our lovely governor has now allowed for a higher density. I can't tell you that I think that that would improve your property value at all. Just gonna put it out there. Then the CRA. So this is a little bit of a,
Continue.
okay, it's quick and I'll be done with it. The CRA is, our city makes money off of it, but it's done to help improve properties. So if he takes that piece of property and improves it from 500,000 to 2,500,000, that $2 million that's over what was frozen on that property, we make a percentage of a percentage of a percentage off of it. But that percentage can be quite significant, because y'all have talked about how much we made on the CRA just this year. And that's from the apartments that they built down there off of Oak Shore.
Oak Shore.
Is that Oak Shore? And so that's, you know, I think that's a pretty good thing. And again, developing properties, we've got to start developing these, because if we don't, we're gonna end up with things that we don't want and that fit in, that they wouldn't have had to come in front of y'all for. Mr. Santoro, I'm gonna ask you the questions I asked you the other night. And I'm gonna start ahead before I ask you these questions. Come on up, share the mic with me. I apologize. Our city is a community of friendly neighbors. I'm gonna tell you there's a handful that aren't, but the rest of us are, okay?
Well, Ms.
That's right. And so, what percentage is delivery that y'all actually make and deliver over what people come pick up? What do you think?
The other night when I was asked this question, I turned around to
Oh.
Chuck,
Mhm.
who is the manager of my facility, because I wanted to make sure that I answered correctly, because I'm not there every day.
Sure.
So Chuck, would you answer that again? What percentages of deliveries over pickups?
You know, I mean, it changes. We mainly deliver. So
Was he sworn
It's
last time?
85.
You need to be
85%.
sworn.
Sir, you need to come to the podium,
So-
state your name and address, and be sworn for the record.
Okay. No, you're fine. You're fine.
Have him come on up.
Yep.
Can you raise your?
I'm Chuck Orlowski.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
And your address, sir?
My address?
Yes, sir.
It's not here in Parker,
You're fine.
but if you need my address, I'll tell it to you.
We need it, we're
Put it
under
in
oath.
record.
5410 Skyline Drive.
And before we start, can you do me a favor? I'm not going to know how to spell your last name. Can you spell that for me, please?
It's ORLOWSKI.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That's a tough one. So you say 85% delivery, probably in that ballpark?
85% is going to be delivery. We have a small delivery truck that we basically truck out. I would say, you know, our top 10 people who spends the most money with us has not even been to our facility. So most of it is outsourced.
And is it a big truck with, I don't know, like an 18-wheeler, or is it a truck with a trailer? What is it?
It's basically just a Dodge Ram 2500 with a 4-foot wide trailer. You know, it is probably about 25 foot long.
And Mr. Santoro, what do y'all do with scrap metal that is cut off and maybe you get to the end of a roll or something?
We turn around and put it in a bin and then sell it back, and they reuse that metal for later for
Okay, so
scrap.
almost a bit of green recycling.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you both. Hang on a second, Paul, got one behind you. Go ahead.
Gary Brannon, 1034 Brannon
You
Place.
don't ever have to say that. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Brandon.
I've dealt in real estate for 35 years. If I thought this metal company was something that wouldn't be an asset for this city, I'd be standing up with what I call the Parker Five, fighting it. I think it'll be a great asset for the city. I've driven around the area to look and see what's going on. They're talking about water bubbling up. Well, if you look to the right from 98, it's a cemetery. Nobody there's complaining about that building. Not one complaint, and I have not seen any of those graves bubble up with all this bubbling going on. Across the street are single-wide trailers. Nobody in the single-wide trailer little community right there is complaining. The Masonic Lodge, it's a metal building. It's got to be 24 feet tall. There's no complaints there. Parker has all their city equipment on Business 98. It ain't the best looking site when you drive by, but it's a city. Most cities have their equipment out. Would it be better if it was somewhere else? Absolutely. We got a church on the corner of Ethlyn with mounds of dirt there. That's like a Butler building. That's a church. That ain't great either. But I'm for this metal building company. I haven't seen anybody that's up there on the front of this road that has a problem with it. Seems like the people that are complaining about it are the same ones that complain about pretty much everything. I don't know if some of these people have access to grind with people. I voted for all these city council members that are active and the mayor, and I vote for y'all because I think y'all can handle our business of the city real well. I do not come up here and critique y'all for everything that y'all make decisions on, like I know better than y'all do. I voted for y'all because y'all are smart at running the city. And do you get everything right? Probably not. Nobody does. But more power to you. I'm proud of what y'all do for this city.
First of all, I'm Paul Palmer again. Do I need to do all
No,
this?
sir,
You're good. Go ahead.
you're sworn in for the evening.
Okay, first of all, back to when I made my presentation to all of you, I talked about the fact that it was manufacturing as well. And so I didn't just think that it was as on the planning commission, I have to look at all of the alternatives. What are all the possible choices? One of them was, is this a laydown yard? Well, I decided that it wasn't. But I still addressed to you, and you probably will recall, Parker was primarily a residential community. So most of my documentation and discussions with the city council members were about all the various issues that would apply. Note that when I discussed with any of you, I only dealt with the regulations, not what it could be or not. I mean, this is crazy. We have people come up here saying, well, we should do it because we've got cookie people making cookies. We got sailmakers. This is just crazy. There's just a difference in size. Now, from the standpoint of being a good citizen, okay, Mayor, wasn't I not most helpful on a lot of the decisions we had to make in the early days? And for the record, I was the biggest financial supporter of the mayor for his campaign. I believed in him. And I'm just putting that on the record. So I have been a supporter, not a detractor. I've used the gifts and talents that I have as an engineer, went to MIT, to try to bring good engineering type analysis to our studies. I presented, it is very true. I am not an expert in water mitigation. Joe is. He's a geologist and a hydrologist, and he works for the DEP doing exactly this and is extraordinarily familiar with the water table issues at that church and how the perturbation that occurs.
Mr. Hoffbauer works for the DEP?
Yes. Oh.
Did you actually work for the FDEP, Joe?
At one time I did.
You did?
Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you. All right. So, where is it going? Okay. So, on the water issue, okay.
What is the point you were trying to get to here, sir?
Okay. The point I'm trying to get to is people are bringing. We have presented what you guys are calling the Angry Five or whatever. We have presented things that are directly related to the regulations. Everything else, what it could be this, is not related to it. Those are emotional issues. They're not technical nor legal issues.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Would anybody else like, yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to make one statement about water issues and contaminated water. And if you researched anything in this city and went to dig a hole, you'd probably find an issue. Where do you start looking at issues and where do you stop? It would never end. The city's barely above flood. It's on the water. I guarantee you half of this city and any of the cities around us, surrounding cities, if you dug deep enough, you'd find something bad under there. And the only lay down place in Parker is still a cemetery.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else have anything that I see you? I can barely see. There you go.
I've been sworn in. Donna Hoffbauer,
Oh, yes.
5033 Sharon Drive.
Thank you, dear. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. I hear this is going to be great. The money on the taxes, this and that. Are you going to lower our ad valorem because of this big manufacturing that's going to bring in a lot of revenue? Did you hear?
The tax issue
The
is
revenue
not
that's
what they're
the
making a
revenue that the
decision on.
manufacturing is bringing in is going to be really good for the city, and there will be more manufacturers coming in. You get one, you get them all.
What about hotels? What do you think about them?
They're all right. I mean,
What do you think about a Marriott?
they're nice.
You think they'd bring taxes to the city, ma'am?
Yeah.
We're getting ready to build one.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
it all goes in the same pot.
But
You
it's
write a budget,
manufacturing.
ma'am?
It's going to be a manufacturing.
What is it they're making?
They have machines.
Ma'am, what is it they're making?
Do you have machines?
They squash steel. You could take a beer can and stand on it and do the same thing.
Do you have machines that require oil and lubricants in your facility?
We do have machines in our facility, and there is a,
WD-40 or something?
in a container, yes.
Right.
Yes.
When you have a machine, it's just like a car. You have to change the oil, and you have to change it a lot because the machines are being used a lot. I've
Yes.
worked in a manufacturing facility.
Yes, ma'am.
Call it what you want. Sugarcoat it what you want. It's manufacturing. Whether it's light, heavy, put lipstick on a pig, it's a pig. It's manufacturing, okay? And it will cause noise, forklifts. You've already got the guy complaining about the laundromat, the noise. And my question is, it's gonna be good for I drive by. If you wanna ask me what my vesting is, I drive by 4 times a day, back and forth to work. It's not pretty. A lot of stuff isn't. Vines on the fence, not doing too good. You're gonna get more manufacturing in. And if it's good revenue, my question is the ad valorem gonna go down?
No.
So we're gonna be forced to look at several manufacturing. What
One-
if SRM
one
wants,
year of revenue would
what
not
if
make that
SRM
alarm
wants
down.
to come in with additional concrete?
They've got plenty of space.
Oh, you don't know.
You can't ask me, ma'am, if the ad valorem would be reduced based on 1 year's revenue.
Okay, well.
Now, if
and
50 companies come to Parker and build condominiums and stores and retail establishments and hamburger restaurants and stuff like that, and they pay a large amount of tax toward the city of Parker,
Yeah.
I personally would be an advocate of reducing residential tax on homes.
Okay.
But I would not be supportive of reducing it on commercial property.
Okay. You need to check Bay County, because he's still sitting on a church exemption with 0 he's paying.
Who's sitting on a church exemption? What church?
According to Bay County,
Yeah.
he bought the property in January. No taxes were paid.
All right, that's a good question, Mr. Santoro.
It's still showing a church
Santoro?
exemption.
You have a chance to answer the question.
I have no idea. I'll have to ask my accountant.
Okay.
I I know why that is, if you want me to tell you.
Why?
I don't know the
It
answer.
has nothing to do with, it is, it's the property appraiser's office, the way it
Hasn't
works.
changed it.
Mayor, what does that have to do with what?
It doesn't,
we're
ma'am.
right
It
here?
But
doesn't.
he's not done anything wrong, is my point.
We know that because it just haven't changed it yet.
Well, no, it's because whenever the property changes hands in a year, okay, then the property appraiser still, it takes to the next year before they change.
catches up.
So he's not done anything wrong on
Right.
that. There's
Thank
no
you, sir.
underhanded stuff.
Thank you. I knew the answer already, but I just wanted to see if anybody else had said.
I know that there's a bunch of people here that's for and against, and
Yeah.
I know y'all have heard, and I would like, if you would allow, and I would like you not to clap or anything, but if you are for me, for this development.
No, sir.
No,
No.
we're not taking a
Okay.
straw poll.
Please have a seat. I appreciate you, sir. Okay. Pastor?
Pastor Danny Davis, 922 West Park Street. I'll be their neighbor. And
Well, hold up.
I have to swear you in. I recognize your relationship, but I still have to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your
I do
knowledge?
affirm.
Thank you.
I'm the neighbor. Our building is 22 feet tall. We have a holding pond behind that we had to dig. It's about over 4 feet deep, and it's never had 1 inch of water in it with all the rains we've had. So I don't think water, the ground is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay. We'll start selling raffle tickets in a minute.
I'll make it short. Chuck Boterford, 5405 Fleming Street.
Mr. Bodiford, do you
Right
swear?
hand, Mr. Bodiford.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm left-handed.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Can we legally grant this fellow what he needs to build this building?
That's what we're working on, sir. We're going to put it to a vote here shortly.
Okay. I'm all for it. I think it'd be great for Parker. We need to grow. We need to plant the seed so it can grow.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Terry Davis, 937 Pitts Avenue.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
So they talk about no business, but as we heard before, 98 is a business. I've seen 85% of 98 being business. The lady just talked about vines dying on the thing. You guys, they complained about the paper mill. Do they realize that's going to SRM bought that property? It's going to be concrete trucks, big, huge concrete trucks driving back and forth. So one little delivery truck, I don't know, twice a week is not going to do anything to our. This concrete, Tyndall's growing. Concrete's going to be going in and out. There's going to be a lot of big trucks going in and out. What he's bringing in is not going to destroy our streets. I mean, and yes, they talk about the water. I mean, I live right on the water. I can dig personally 6 foot and hit water. I mean, the water table's high, but this, I think it's a great thing. He's a great guy that I see what business does. They were going to have manufacturing at the lumber yard. They just decided not to do it. They scrapped it. They were going to build doors and windows. That's a manufacturing. It got all approved. They decided not to do it.
It was not approved.
It was approved in the first points, but the point is, and then you guys, and then they talk about parking. I shop at Fulcrum or Bill's First Source every day. Some of that parking is a laydown yard. There's no way you're going to park in there, and it's parking. There's parking available. They're just like them. There's not a lot of people that go in it. You go in, I drive with my trailer, they load up, I drive out. We don't sit there and hang out and shop at the store. And it's 20-something feet in the air as well. Florida's law says our codes are 62 feet. It's a single story. I build them every day. As long as it's as long as it's a warehouse, it's not a double story. So I just want to bring what the rules and regulations are too, so people understand. I build every single day. That's what I do for a living. I think it's great. I think it's can bring taxes. We need to do stuff that helps Parker. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Still sworn in. One of the things that the Planning Commission considered when we reviewed this development was that it is in a CRA. And as you all know, being in a CRA, you have much more strict standards in terms of beautifying the city. You have things like fantail driveways, added foliage, barriers between your neighbors. I want to point out that in every single case, downward lighting, in every case, Mr. Santora has said he will comply and make sure that that happens. If we're talking about beautification of Parker, 24-foot tall building with the right lighting, the right structure, the right sidewalks, the right trees, the right foliage, the right fencing can be beautiful. And I hope people, have enough creativity in their own minds to see that. The other thing is when we reviewed the parking, Mr. Santora, if you don't all know, is an engineer. And the LDRs do allow for engineers to review these plans and before it goes to the city engineer, make their own conclusions. Early on, he talked about flooding. Early on, he was the guy that recommended the dry ponds that are going in. I don't know that enough, Mr. Santora, can I ask you, you're putting in you're putting in a dry pond in order to deal with some of the flooding that may occur as a result of this provision, or at least that's the plans we saw. Would you mind telling them a little bit more about that? Because I don't think enough of that's come up. It's enormous. It is, right now there's nothing. This would be an addition to what is not there today. It would improve the flooding. The last thing I just want to talk about is, I know, we're constantly talking about, what is right for the city, the type of business owners that we might want to bring in here. I think it's a whole lot nicer to have somebody with the kind of integrity that this gentleman is bringing to Parker than perhaps somebody who's different. Thank you.
Thank you,
But
sir.
I would like, if you don't mind, Mr. Santora, thank you.
This is what we call the grading plan. And a grading plan sets up to show you what the elevations of the building is going to be when I say ground and the elevations around it. And if you can see this being our building, we've got a detention pond all the way across the front and all the way down the side. So all the water that comes off of the building, that comes off the parking lot, everything is directed to these ponds. These ponds then fill up, okay? And as I think Mr. Palmer alluded to, within 3 hours, it's all perked into the ground. So and then if it gets greater than your storm event that's required by your rules, then it has an overflow and it goes across and then out into the road. But it meets all your requirements. It meets all of Florida Department of Environmental Protection requirements, and most of the water then perks into the ground and nothing leaves the site without going through these ponds. So it's not only a pre and post, it's also a cleansing.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Okay, most of you, if you remember when we were talking about the Fulcrum project, we were worried about both stormwater management and transverse migration, and so how the groundwater moves. So I made a presentation. I went up to Florida State, met with a couple professors to get my things done. Joe Hoffbauer was critical in helping me understand, and then I made a presentation to the city explaining. Now, in the case of Mr. Santora here, most of you aren't probably aware that he did not have to do any stormwater mitigation at all, because he falls under the category he was covering less hard surfaces than his predecessor. The point I didn't get to finish on why this can create a problem, why a dry pond can actually exacerbate the issue of groundwater infiltration. And it happens like this. So remember when the Parker Church was there, it was a solid, I mean, it was all pretty much all covered, okay? I don't know if it was 90%, but pretty close. Everything went into stormwater, ran down the road. You guys did my driveway, everything took care of it. Now, when they started taking down the church, and they're taken down in pieces, all of a sudden we had exposed areas and other. So the stormwater that was, the rain that was falling on there flowed from the hard surfaces into the area that was still, that had been newly exposed, and that created, and again, I'm not allowed to speak, per my attorney, about these technical issues. So I will defer to Joe to explain how the doming effect, et cetera, it was in my presentation. But the bottom line was, I'm not making it up. About a week and a half after the storm, the water starts percolating up through my driveway and through my carport. I put off doing those of you who know me for a long time can remember my place was beautifully landscaped. After the hurricane, I had so much construction, rebuilding seawalls, moving trees. I was just getting to the point of renegotiating with a landscaper. It's going to be about $100,000 worth of work. And then we had that rain event and the water's percolating up. When they finished removing all of the church's property, I didn't have a percolation event anymore, because now the water was spread out all over the whole area, and it couldn't create a mounding effect. Okay, again, Joe can speak with great technical expertise about that particular problem. And I hope Mr. Santora recognizes that the fact that I brought up that he was not even required to put any stormwater management. And he may also recall that the only stormwater management that I thought might mitigate the chance for transverse migration or wetting or horizontal flow of the groundwater, which then percolates and comes up, was a wet pond. That's why I kept using those terms. And I learned that from the Fulcrum project. In fact, I went over and met with the engineer, Doug Crooks, and spent a lot of time with him on that. So that's my point. Hope
Thank you,
accept
sir.
that.
Appreciate it. Is there nobody else? Okay, very good.
All right, so the first thing the council needs to decide. Oh,
Corey Petty, 4409 East 3rd Street.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Can
right
you-
behind the percolating thing.
Can we do this,
Yeah,
please?
go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
just a couple of statements.
What's your last name? What is your last name?
Petty, Petty.
And Mr. Petty, you said you live right behind
Right
where
behind
the
the
project
thing that's
will be?
percolating into the ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. As everyone knows, I've been rebuilding my house and I've been digging. I've put a fence up. I've had no problem with groundwater, no issues before the church was ripped down, after the church was ripped down. I think everyone needs to remember there was trees. There ain't no fucking trees. I'm sorry. Ooh. Ooh. Sorry. So, yeah, so I don't do tree work no more because there's no trees. But I'm completely for his metal building, you know. It's definitely going to bring in a lot of money. I don't like personal talking, so I'm sorry. But, you know, I really do think it's going to be good for Parker. And it's going to bring in a lot of business, a lot more people, and SRM did buy the paper mill, so there's going to be a lot of trucks. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Anybody? Here we go. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Orlowski, yes?
Yeah, Orlowski.
Okay, sir.
My thing is, I mean, everybody who connects to our property where we're trying to build has no problem with us coming to them. Mr. Ralph that lives right behind on 2nd Street, the church right here, you got Corey. You know, I just think it's crazy. Somebody that lives miles away has issues with it when the people that it butts up to doesn't have any issues with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sloan, you want to go
all
back and
right,
say?
back to what I was saying, Mayor. The consideration is whether to grant a variance on the 3 issues that I brought up: access off of the state or federal highway being required, and the discussion about the deliveries that you've heard. The second would be the square footage of the building, and the third would be the parking. And so we can either break those apart and do them in 3 separate analyses, or if the council is so inclined, we could do it all part of one analysis. It's up to y'all.
We hear it all at one time. Everybody's sat and heard what they had to say. Everybody's heard what the people in the audience had to say. So, you
All
want to
right,
give?
so the standard is that the council must determine by clear and convincing evidence that a variance should be granted. And if you do not determine by clear and convincing evidence each one of those criteria, the 7 criteria I read, then the variance would be denied.
Okay. Well, I already know what my answers are gonna be. Are you asking me my?
Well, I'm not sure how y'all want to approach it, whether you want to go through line by line, or if you just want to have a motion, that's up to the chair.
Well, Council, have you heard enough testimony in the last 2 hours to make an answer without going line by line on all 7 questions? Tell me what you want to do.
I think we should just do one motion
Okay.
and be done with it.
If it's the council's desire, that'll be good. So,
I make a motion that we grant him his variance.
we have a motion and a second on the floor, madam. Would you please call the roll?
Miss Barrow, Miss Barrett,
Yes.
Miss Barrow,
Yes.
Mr. Chappell,
Yes.
Mr. Haney, Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
All right, now, given the fact that you've granted the variance on those 3 issues, then you have to consider the application for the development permit. I'm assuming whatever motion, if one is made, would include that it would contain the standard provisions, it would contain the provisions of the
Scribbles, rules, and
engineer,
errors, and so on and so forth.
and the items that he's agreed to do.
That's correct.
On the property.
In your packages, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see that the agreements made between Mr. Santoro and the City of Parker and the petition for variance are so documented. If you had a chance to read those, you'll see what he's agreed to put in there, including the apartments, not apartments, but little stores.
And
So
then-
we
then
did
I'll
a
have
motion
some-
and a second.
I'll
to
have
it.
some legal conditions also, so
So we need to vote on this too, don't we?
you need a motion, yes, sir?
Yeah, we need a motion.
I
to-
make,
Go ahead.
I make the motion.
Got a motion that's been seconded. Madam, would you please call the roll?
Miss Barrett,
Yes.
Miss Barrow,
Yes.
Mr. Chappell,
Yes.
Mr. Haney, Mayor Kelly.
Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Chappell, do you have anything you'd like to talk about before I close the meeting?
No, I talked about the Easter egg hunt that's the last time, and the only change on that is some of us are gonna be up here on the 20th to start putting candy in the eggs at 10:30 in this building right here.
Okay.
And then overflow from that will still be on the 25th, I guess it is.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
gonna start on the
25th
20th?
at Parker Lodge. If
All
we
right.
need
You're
to.
gonna start on the 20th here.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Mr. Haney, you're up.
Well, there seem to be a lot of LDR experts out there, but if they want to go to section 3-2 and review that.
Can you speak closer to the mic?
Is close enough? Okay. There seem to be a bunch of citizens that are LDR experts. I'd like to review section 3-2 as far as this decision was made.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Barrow? Anything?
I have no, I just wanna thank Mr. Santoro for putting up with what he's put up with just to get a building put here.
Absolutely.
Very good. Ma'am?
I do have a question that has come up to me, regarding the water lines for Kendall. The city's acquiring 10 foot, correct?
For
For the water line that's being.
the easement?
For the easement.
Yes.
Yeah, for the SRF easement, yes, ma'am.
Can I ask as far as the setbacks on those properties,
Right.
does your setbacks remain the same from the original property line, or will the setbacks be moved? from the
Nothing
plan?
changes. Just
Nothing
gonna come back,
changes.
dig a hole, and put a pipe in it.
That's all I need.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Swan.
Thank you, Mayor.
See you in court.
Jesus Louise, I'm freezing. So cold. Look, they're like, it's got warm. I'm like, now they're comfortable. I am. Mayor, how you doing? You want a Ricola?
No.
This is all I've lived on today.
I'm going to Gator National in the morning.
Good for you, darling. I wish I was going with you.
I'll take pictures.
Thanks. I'm golden. She said, am I good? I said, I'm golden.